Hello, welcome to another =6 video. What we're going to be doing today is shimming the Tokyo Marui Sopmod recoil shock gearbox. Obviously you can use the principles here for shimming any sort of gearbox for any AEG, but this particular one is going to be for the recoil shock series, for the Tokyo Marui Sopmod. What we're going to do, obviously we've prepped the gearbox, which is which is really important. We go basically take all the parts out, give them all a nice clean in like some sort of a fairy liquid solution or something. Get all the dirt and gunk off and all the contaminants, so it's all nice and clean. Then sort of clean the trigger contacts. I like to grease them up a little bit so they're nice and sort of smooth moving, so they don't jam up or anything. And then obviously expand the O-rings and just make sure obviously all the sort of compression is 100%. And then what we'll do is we'll start off by doing the spur gear, which is the middle one. What we like to do here is just I'll start off with a nice sort of flat wide 0.3 on the bottom of this. And the bushings themselves, make sure that they're obviously pressed in as far as they can do, or bearings, whichever one you go for. What we like to do is also just make sure that all of the gears sort of spin nice and freely inside the bushings and stuff, that they're not restricted or anything. Sometimes with different tolerances and stuff like that you can get so they're too tight or they're too loose. Obviously if there's some sort of sidewards movement there, you're obviously not going to want that. Same goes with in the actual hole itself. Obviously it's not so much a problem on these Tokyo Marui gearboxes, but just in general, it's always worth having, covering all the bases, make sure you check everything. So just make sure it's it's not too tight, not too loose, nice and smooth on there. So we'll put this one in, make sure it's nice and flat to start off with. Just spin it around, just make sure that as you're doing it nice and slowly, nothing's catching or anything. Nothing's grinding. It's nice and smooth in there. I know it's simple stuff. Well, that's the whole point of it. If you know what I mean, it's back to basics. This really, but just make sure that it's nothing's touching or anything like that. Then what we'll do, because we've got two things really in shimming. You're wanting to remove the play from the gears as they potentially might bounce up and down from being loose. Obviously you don't want them too tight, so that's the first thing that you're focusing on. But also you're looking at how these gears interact with other parts inside. Is this touching the bottom of the casing, say for instance? Is it touching, when we fit the sector gear, is it going to be touching the calf lever? Are they going to be touching each other? So how is the bevel gear here going to be affecting or touching against the motor? Is it going to be too tight? Is it going to be too loose? Are you going to be grinding away the pinion gear? These are all things that's the second part of the shimming. So you've got those two parts you need to focus on, not just removing play and making sure that it's not overly tight, but also seeing how they interact with the other parts. So we'll get this one sorted. Gone and pre-done some here. When you're selecting different shims, all you can do is really just pick your sort of generic ones. I like to start with the big, nice, flat, round ones, the 0.3s, and then just see how they go inside there. When you fit them in there, I like to tighten the gearbox up so you get an actual representation of what it's like when it's all done up. You only need one or two just to, you could just hold it tight, but we're dealing in 0.1 millimeters here, and obviously tightening it up can make it slightly a bit more tighter and stuff. So now what you want to do is just check. We can obviously see the spur gear is quite far in there, so we don't need to get a finger in there to spin it or see how sort of freely it moves and stuff. Really what we're just after here is just poking from underneath. We just want to see if there's any up and down movement. So we know the gearbox is nice and tight. There's no in tiny little bit of play there. But obviously what we don't want to do is do it so tight that it can't spin, but we don't want to do it too loose. So you know, in that obviously there's bounce up and down, you see. So yeah, when people say it's kind of like an art, it is really an art. You've got to just use your judgment call here and just sort of see if it's, you know, I mean that's fine. You know, we can't push it up or down. Not to any sort of, you know, I mean, if you put another shim in there, it wouldn't really make a difference. There's always a chance that it might go on the side of too tight. So, and then obviously we can poke a screwdriver in here and just turn it a little bit, and you know, the fact that it's just effortless to turn here means that when we start adding heavy sort of, you know, pressure components in there like springs and stuff, that it will be effortless to turn. Really, we shouldn't have to resort to grease and stuff in order to get free movement. It should just, the tolerances should just be perfect, so that, and all the shimming, so that it just spins freely. When you flick if you removed everything like the cut-off lever and the anti-reverse latch, you could just flick the gears and they would, in theory, keep spinning like a wheel on a bicycle. If you turn it upside down, you should just be able to throw it and it should just be able to keep going. Say for instance the bearings were going or broken on that particular bike, you know, you would potentially throw it and obviously the wheel wouldn't spin very far. What we'll do is just undo this one and move to the next one. So we know that one's fine now. It doesn't really intersect with many components, so that one is pretty straightforward. Not really until you sort of fit the sector gear, and then obviously you want to just double check the interaction between the two, that they aren't touching. Righty. So obviously just keep an eye out and don't lose any of the hard work that you've done already. So now what we'll do is we'll move to the sector gear here. What we'll start off with is by checking for, like I say, just put anyone on that to start off with. See how we're just moving effortlessly here. And here's where we start to want to check interactions with other parts. Say for instance how the gun works on singles. So obviously if there's a particular, say you lose singles, say for instance, this potentially might be the cause. So just obviously removing the spring off the trigger here, putting it into single mode. Just basically go all the way back to full auto. See how the cut-off lever moves out the way there for full auto, and put it back one so it drops in place. Now potentially, so now as the sector gear spins round now, it now knocks the cut-off lever up, which in turn pings back the contact switch there and stops it firing. So what we want to do is we want to just obviously move it so it's the safety's off. Right, so it's in single fire mode now, and obviously the safety there isn't catching on the trigger because it's got the built-in safety on the thing on this new version 2. See how we interact in there, it's nice and smooth and stuff.